Good evening. My name is Ben Schwartz. I am the head of artistic planning for the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra. But actually, I'm not here in that capacity right now. I'm here actually just in the company of two wonderful colleagues, Kent Nagano, who's here to my left, who's the music director of the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, and Krzysztof Penderecki, the wonderful Polish composer whose magnificent work, The Passion According to St. Luke, is being performed to open the Salzburg Festival tomorrow. And Kent, being back here in Salzburg right now, I have a really strong memory of almost exactly 1 year ago when you led our own orchestra, the Bavarian Radio Symphony, in a performance of the Messiaens Transfiguration entre Seigneur Jésus Christ. And now here you are again with your own orchestra, the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, in their very first performance here in the Salzburg Festival. In fact, as I understand it, it's the first performance altogether of a Canadian orchestra as part of this festival. You must be coming here with great pride. It's a wonderful occasion.
It is, of course, for every ensemble, every musician, every artist, a great honor to be a part of this Salzburg tradition. It's one of the original great music festivals of the world. And the Montreal Symphony, as you just said, has never had the chance to play here before. We've done so many tours of Europe, but never had the great privilege to be involved with the Salzburg Music Festival. I think having the chance to bring such a great masterpiece, such as the Penderecki St. Luke's Passion, also adds to the general feeling within the orchestra of excitement, enthusiasm. Of course, to be here is already something special enough, but to get the chance to share such a great work within this context, the spiritual music festival, which Markus Hinterhäuser imagined and inaugurated last year, as you said, it's something that I think for the whole orchestra, for us anyway, it will be unforgettable. So we're very happy to be here.
You referenced this spiritual sort of festival within a festival. As you mentioned, Markus Hinterhäuser, the intendant of the festival. Some of you may have seen, by the way, I just wanted to mention it. Markus was originally going to be joining us tonight, but as is the case when you have a very busy festival like this one, unfortunately a small crisis came up which he has to deal with, so he sends his regrets. Just briefly, I also wanted to mention, you will probably see behind me, and maybe even hear, that we're sitting here on the terrace of the press porch, as it were, at the Salzburg Festival offices, and directly behind us is the general rehearsal of Jedermann, which is another great Salzburg Festival tradition. That is also going up, as it were. I think tomorrow is the first. No, I think actually later in the week is the first performance, but it's being rehearsed behind us. You may hear it as we speak. This spiritual festival within a festival at the beginning of this year's concerts features a number of works across a really broad range of genres. Markus has even included a film, and they make references to spirituality in all kinds of interesting ways, not just Christian spirituality, but also there are those that make references to that are inspired by Eastern or mystical traditions. But what I wanted to ask you about this work, which the Montreal Symphony is performing tomorrow, Maestro Penderecki, is that within it there are all kinds of really rich influences across. It has a very particular kind of expression that is unique to your voice, but I hear so much that comes from so many different places. And I wondered, what was the impulse when you decided that you wanted to actually write a passion, a genre that has such a deep tradition? What was it that led you to approach that?
I mean, it's more than 50 years ago now. It's hard to say. I was writing short pieces, very contemporary short pieces. And one day I said myself, now is the time to do something important and write big piece, long piece. And I was afraid to do it, actually, because I never before wrote longer than maybe 15 minutes, and the Passion is 80 minutes. But I wanted very much to break through with my new piece, and it happened that this piece became very popular and important. And what the critics said after performance, that this is the best Passion after Johann Sebastian Bach, which is maybe the greatest for me, such a word. Yeah.
That's yes. Inevitably, when you write a Passion, you must have known in the back of your mind that you measure up against these reference points like Bach, just as if you were write a symphony. People think of the great symphonic masters.
Without Bach, I couldn't write this piece, of course. This there is no copy. Absolutely has nothing to do with Bach, but spirit.
Yes, I understand what you mean. The Montreal Symphony Orchestra performed this work just yesterday, in fact, in Cracow. Was it 2 days ago or was it yesterday? Yesterday, in fact, yesterday. And Kent, I wonder if you could say something like that about that experience with your orchestra, the Montreal Symphony in Cracow, in Mr. Penderecki's home country, with this great reference work. What was that like for the orchestra and for you to prepare? And I know that you performed also with the choir from Cracow. Did you arrive ahead of time and rehearse with them there?
Yes. Before we came, the Montreal Symphony gave performances in Montreal, and we used our own chorus there. So yes, I came ahead of the orchestra, rehearsed and prepared the chorus of Cracow. It is also the first visit of the Montreal Symphony Orchestra. We've been to Poland before, but not to Cracow, so that was also an ambassadorial kind of visit. The officials from the Canadian Embassy were there, and it really felt like an official musical ambassadorial visit. The orchestra plays in a very distinct style and a very distinct tradition, different from other North American orchestras, in that I think it's partially because the province of Quebec, from which we come from, has never really ruptured itself or separated itself from the continent. We speak the continental languages. French is a dominant language, but of course German, Italian, Spanish are also spoken in Quebec, and just as a cultural life, we don't feel any real separation from European life. Therefore, when we play, it's an unusual tradition, one of the oldest orchestras and regions of North America, but we play with all of the stereotypic technique and brilliance of an American orchestra, but with the phrasing and breathing and color sensitivity that's closer to European tradition. So it was interesting to share this work with our public in Montreal, and then to share the same work with a different choir for the public in Poland. The result was different and similar, and that all of us who are performing artists, the one thing that we have to believe in is in the great literature of our repertoire. We have to believe that if the quality is great enough, that the public, no matter what the level of experience or education or background, nationality, if the quality of the music, of the art form is really great, it will communicate. And that was the thing that for us it was such a confirmation of what a masterpiece the St. Luke's Passion is. From Montreal, where the piece had never been heard, to receive instantaneous, spontaneous standing ovation. And the same last night, in a different culture, a different choir. It was really a feeling of affirmation that this work is something special.
It is just an incredibly powerful work. It's also, the scale of it, as you mentioned, is so big. The forces required, the scale of expression from the dynamic range to the kinds of techniques that you employ. I find it sort of astonishing that you hadn't written anything even approaching that scale until you approached that.
Until I wrote the Saint-Luc, the longest piece was maybe 12 minutes. Now I can't believe really how I could do it. Yeah.
One of the things that I wanted to ask you about is in the context of the Salzburg Festival here, where this year's Ouverture Spirituelle, as it's called, is organized around the theme of passion. That's a sort of organizing principle for all of the works that are programmed in this part of the festival. And in their literature, they say something really interesting about passion, which is a word that has so many different connotations. But one of the ones that they point out is the idea of suffering. And as an artist, suffering being part of what it is that you do as a creative act. Is this something that you can relate to when you worked through all of your ideas and constructed this massively scaled, ambitious piece? Was it incredibly? I mean, was it a real deep sort of suffering kind of struggle for you, or did the music actually flow more easily?
Not really. I didn't think, and I didn't want to write Requiem, but really very dramatic piece. Actually, I had the Maestro did this piece down in Cracow. Wonderful performance, but absolutely different. This piece was done before, because it was done as a very dramatic piece. And Maestro did, what I say, mysterium. Really, it was a great mysterium with dynamic piano and 3 piano, maybe 4 piano. Wonderful. I never had this piece such performance like Maestro did. Fantastic.
Kent, if I can ask you, I know you don't only do music that as complex and as largely scaled as this, but it is notable that you're a wonderful advocate for the music of Messiaen, which of course has a very spiritual element. Messiaen, as it's well known and well reported, was devout, and his faith had a lot to do with his music. This music also has, a really strong spiritual element to it. Is there something about that speaks to you personally, about music as a sort of spiritual endeavor?
Yes, and I think if for the public and the artist, it's considered a part of creativity, the spiritual aspect. It's part of what makes art so multidimensional and has a different kind of a depth than entertainment forms. Of course, a part of performance of what we call classical music today, it should be entertaining. There should be emotion. There should be drama. There should be charisma. There should be theater. There should be explosive spontaneity and eruptions and great moments of tenderness. Of course, this goes without saying. But within the palette of the human experience, there's much more than that. There's the intellectual depth. There's the profound spiritual depth that humans have had a great facility for communicating throughout the history of humankind. It should also be said that much of the repertoire today came to us through the church tradition. They were one of the greatest benefactors since the very, very beginning of what we would refer to as formal or classical music. And since that is a part of the culture, I feel that completely apart from any kind of organized or orthodox or non-orthodox religion, so to say, the feeling of spirituality is something that binds people together. It's something that makes us somehow different from other species, other forms of life on Earth, and is an integral part of our heritage and our culture. If we somehow don't allow that to be in proper balance with the other sets of emotions, the other dimensions, then we run the risk that something in that palette becomes less rich or more pale. So yes, of course, it is important, as it is, I think, for at least most of the fellow music lovers that I go to concerts with. It's something we look for. It's something we appreciate when it happens.
Indeed, and of course, there's also that when you attend a concert, there's something very special about the communal experience. Absolutely. Everyone having their own personal response to it, to the art form that they take in, but in the company of a community. I just wanted to say there may be some people who are just joining us now. Again, my name is Ben Schwartz. I'm here in the company of Kent Nagano and Krzysztof Penderecki. Kent is here conducting the Montreal Symphony Orchestra tomorrow night to open the Salzburg Festival. You may see and hear behind me some rehearsals going on for Jedermann, and in fact, we've just finished a really thrilling rehearsal for tomorrow's opening concert of the Salzburg Festival of the Luke Passion. We've been talking a lot about spirituality and about the passion as an overarching theme for this festival. And there's another question that I wanted to ask you about the passion, which is that there is, in addition to the musical structure that you create, there is a very strong dramatic one and a strong narrative. And in your passion, you've actually chosen to have the narrator declaim and speak rather than sing, as the evangelist does in the Bach Passions famously. And I wonder if you could talk about that decision and how you decided to dramatize this.
It's so many years now after I wrote this piece. Yes, from the beginning I wanted to have a narrator not singing but speaking, because I think you can say much more speaking than really singing, and this is like comment. This narration is the comment of the piece.
Yeah, it is. There's something incredibly powerful about being spoken to, literally, and the way that it happens here is particularly interesting. Kent, I suspect you may have been involved in the decision. Can you talk about how you decided to place the narrator?
Sometimes things happen by accident. And in this case, when accidental circumstances happen, it obliges one to really put to good use all of your creative powers possible to resolve the problem. In this case, we had set up a kind of a theatrical set for the performance, where the soloists were in a more traditional position, but instead of high voice to low voice, we set up a kind of a staging with how the voices are placed. And we placed the speaking narrator, as you said, on a very high podium just behind the violins that would tower over the entire orchestra. So it gave a theatrical impression of authority, also gave a perspective towards the audience, so that as the speaker or the narrator would speak to the audience, he would be speaking down rather than speaking up or out. And theatrically, that gives a very, very different feeling, like a prime minister, or like a president, or like a preacher, or a minister, or something. It gives quite a strong tension, a theatrical tension. But when I arrived here in Salzburg today, we found out that the position where we were going to build this really raised platform to place the speaker, that it did not correspond for where the loudspeakers had been set. The loudspeakers were meant to amplify the voice to fill the Felsenreitschule, and we're very concerned that it would create a very strange effect to have the speaker being very dramatically engaged to the left part of the orchestra, but his voice coming out over the podium of the conductor.
I see, I understand.
And so it's a tribute to the staff of the Salzburg Festival, to my own orchestra staff, to all of us who we're trying to quickly come up. I think we had 10 minutes to come up with a solution, so we quickly outlined several sketches of what might be a solution, and one of them was to go into the arcades, the natural arcades of the Felsenreitschule. And we gave it a try, and it really worked.
It works wonderfully.
It works wonderfully, and I must...
He has a big voice.
Yes,
yeah, very important voice.
Very big, imposing voice, and somehow that big voice coming from the stone
Yes.
gives, I think, even a much, much more powerful impression than if you were simply standing on the side. So sometimes accidents work in your favor.
When you have a creative and competent team working together, then they can, and certainly in this case they do. I think we need to wrap up our conversation. It's been a real pleasure to speak with you, Kent Nagano, music director of the Montreal Symphony Orchestra, who, as we've mentioned, are opening the Salzburg Festival, the very first big concert of the festival, tomorrow evening. And in fact, the orchestra's first performance here at the Salzburg Festival. Congratulations on that. And Maestro Penderecki, congratulations on...
It's something very important to open the such a festival like here with my work. So I'm proud, really.
As you should be. As you should be. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, my name is Ben Schwartz. It's been a pleasure to spend the evening together with these two gentlemen. And I hope that everybody who goes to the concert enjoys it as much as we're enjoying the experience of it here.